Some teams are going to be forced to do, at least consider things they didn't want to do. I still think at the end of the day, they'll say, we'd rather lose one guy as opposed to two. This deal with Arvidsson with Nashville and LA, that was a combination time to change our core and fix a potential expansion problem. And they said, we'll take the 2 picks as opposed to the Kings, as opposed to Seattle getting them.
Now back to Rintoul and Sermon.
That's Elliot Friedman commenting this morning, asked about what Seattle's doing. Well, we did see Seattle make a couple of moves today, actually. Karen, they filled a couple of roles behind the bench. We know who at least 2 of the assistants in Seattle are going to be. I imagine we're going to hear more from the Kraken in days and weeks to come. 2 assistant coaches is generally not enough. You're going to need a little bit more than that. Video staff, all of those sorts of things.
You need a bigger staff, but it does not surprise me that these decisions and announcements are coming out. His 2 selections are Paul McFarland. He's an NHL assistant coach with Florida and Toronto in the past, and Jay Leach, head coach of the AHL's Providence franchise. That's the Boston Bruins. Scott, organization. McFarland also spent 2 years with the Panthers. I said that already, but we've got an expansion draft 2 weeks tomorrow. It seems like it's coming up. Like, that seems crazy to me. It's 2 weeks tomorrow, but July 21st is 2 weeks tomorrow. And you'd have to think they've got Hackstall in place. They've got all their management people in place for a long time. You want to think that he wants to fill out his staff pretty quickly here, just because they all want to be in on the discussion of what kind of team do we want to build, and what players are we going to get. So I think we're going to start to see, we got 2, probably a couple more coming in the next couple of weeks.
Jay Leach played 70 games, I believe, over the course of 11 seasons, bounced around with organizations. Most of his career was spent in the minor leagues, and as you mentioned, he's been doing his head coach and thing at the minor league level. McFarland's the same, and they were on the staff together. So these 2 have previously worked together in Toronto. McFarland had coached in the O, head coach, then made his way to the Leafs, then stepped back, went back to the O to be a head coach, and now he comes back to the National Hockey League. So they obviously formed some sort of relationship there. Seattle is going to be compelling, and part of it is the effect that it could have on the market long before Seattle gets a chance to draft a player in this expansion draft.
So this tweet came in from, I believe it was Scott Wheeler, who's, of course, a prospects writer, and he said McFarland was Shane Wright's coach for a year, and Wright never played a game for him. The Franz GM head coach's tenure comes and goes without a trace. He has been doing regular calls, meetings with Shane and the rest of those kids, building a program he'll never see in action. But the point is, he knows Shane Wright. Now, Shane Wright is next year's draft, am I right, Scott? So it's not somebody that he could have drafted in this one, but
Correct.
He does know the potential first overall pick in next year's draft. We have no idea what Seattle will get in that draft. If it's like the Vegas Golden Knights, they may be drafting 30 overall in next year, in 2 years draft, because the Vegas Golden Knights made it to the Stanley Cup final. But it is interesting to know that he does have a connection to what is expected to be the first overall pick in 2 years draft.
Well, there's a lot of rumors flying around right now, and just seeing what the Philly News is saying, Philly Hockey Now is saying, the Philadelphia Flyers, they believe, are the front runners to land Seth Jones. I imagine there's a few different factions around the National Hockey League that would say that about their team. No, Chicago, that's the front runner. As soon as they move Duncan Keith, it's Chicago that's going to bring in Seth Jones. Philly, hey, we want to bring in Seth Jones. We know they want to make some sort of shakeup. There's a lot that could happen. It is rumor season right now. The San Jose Sharks apparently want to add 2 goalies and a center at some point during the course of this offseason. How are they going to go about doing that? It's a big question that they have to answer this offseason as well. Goalies, depending what level you're looking for, might be available, might not. There are rumors flying right now around the National. It's fun, especially if a few of them come to fruition in the next couple of weeks.
It is fun because, as Elliot Friedman said, Scott, and we know this from the Vegas Golden Knights expansion draft, no one wants to be the Dale Talon of this year's draft. And so you're going to see some more moves right now, which LA and the Preds did, because Preds didn't want to lose Victor Arvidsson for nothing. So they found a player to take him, and they got draft picks in return. Do those draft picks help in getting another player off their roster? Someone maybe that, Seattle might take, or another team might take, someone like a Matt Duchene, Ryan Johansson, just throwing names out there that they probably want those off their books, but you'd have to obviously throw in a sweetener to get those off your books. So it's going to be fun to see what happens in the next couple of weeks, because I do think as soon as the Stanley Cup final ends, it's going to start to be moving. I think it's going to start to move pretty quickly.
See these rumors out of San Jose and the number of goaltenders that the author has put in here on San Jose Hockey Now. Hey, how could the Sharks address their goaltending situation? Like Cam Talbot, if they've got to make a difficult choice there with Capo Kakinen coming up, is that a possibility? Braden Holtby, would Vancouver throw in a significant sweetener to get that contract off the books now that it's Thatcher Demko's net? Or is that not going to happen? There are a lot of names out there right now. Look, Nate Schmidt's name's sort of out there. Maybe. We're not sure. Jim Benning in Vancouver shot down any players have requested trade rumors a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. But there was one that persisted over the weekend, and Rick Dollywall reported that as much as he's tried to refute it, there are people who insist that Nate Schmidt would like a change of scenery. So that's a name that's at least potentially out there. But this is the silly season you referred to earlier. That's just where we are right now in the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, you throw names out there, you hear they're not happy, and all of a sudden they want out of their cities. We've heard it with Matthew Tkachuk. Maybe he's asked for a trade, but no, that was refuted. It's just these little nuggets get dropped here and there, and people run with them. It's just a matter of which is true and which is not. Nate Schmidt, I know Jason Bruff, host of the 650 morning show, stirred the pot a little bit yesterday when he was asked right at the end of the show if he thought Nate Schmidt would be back, and he said, oh, if I was leaning, I'd say no. But he's not throwing it out there that he knows anything. It's just like a feeling at this point. If you're Vancouver, can you afford to lose a player like Nate Schmidt? Has he actually asked for a trade out? It's you get these little agents or GMs or whoever are dropping these little nuggets, and you see what sticks, what not. If I was to be a betting person, I mean, I would put a betting that Nate Schmidt is back with the Vancouver Canucks next year. But that's just, you never know. It depends. If players are really unhappy, they're going to find a way out.
Jamie Dodd is the Shohei Ohtani of this program. That's a really good thing. He's going to the All-Star game, and he's going to pitch, and he's going to hit there. Jamie joins the program now. Am I going to be disappointed once again, Jamie? You tell me, and Karen, I want you to weigh in on this as well. I, last offseason, thought we were going to get some fireworks, and because it was so short, I think that was one of the biggest reasons. I think that was one of the biggest factors into why we didn't see more names change hands. Feels to me like there are a lot of organizations around the National Hockey League that want to move players, want a bit of a change in their organization. They're not satisfied with how things finished or the way things are going right now. And there's the impetus of Seattle coming in and the potential of losing players. Jamie, am I going to be disappointed once again this offseason, or is there actually something here?
Well, I mean, first of all, Scotty, I got to say that I think the Shohei Ohtani nickname has become increasingly flattering since you first gave it to me with the tear he is on. I'm not sure I can live up to it anymore, given what he's doing on both sides of the ball in Major League Baseball. But you know what? I mean, just knowing the NHL, I would always, I think, to this question, lean to saying, yeah, you probably will be disappointed because it is not a league known for these big blockbuster-style moves. Now, the flip side this year is there's a very good chance there's a Jack Eichel trade, and there's a very good chance there's a Seth Jones trade, right? So those are two big-name star players that we have a very, very, very good idea that they're going to be on the move. So that's exciting, but that's also not going to be a surprise when it happens. So it's not going to feel as dramatic as if a guy like that gets moved out of the blue. So, I mean, I hate to say it. Obviously, I would love to see a ton of player movement and some big names flying all over the places and some true surprises ahead of the expansion draft. But I will always lean to NHL general managers collectively producing the boring, uninteresting option.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be... You're not going to get the within an hour of each other or 10 minutes of each other Hall for Larson, Weber for Subban trades. Like, I don't think those are going to go down. But, I mean, to put in the wrinkle of the Seattle expansion draft, it might end up being a lot more active than we do think, just because these teams do have to make some moves or may want to make moves so they don't lose players. Also, did we hear going into last offseason, because it was so short, and you have to think last offseason was November, December, did we hear about all these bigger name players wanting out of the potential franchises?
Not the same way. Not the exact same way. And we did hear some discontent, and I guess that was the point I was making with the question coming in, that you had unrest but you didn't have a lot of time. There's been more time now. And many of those organizations, like, here's the reason I'm so excited as a hockey fan and hope that you two didn't rain on my parade correctly right now with your predictions, is because I just started going through the standings. Well, Colorado's got to do something because they've got a protection issue. And while I think their smart move is to go Tampa Bay and be patient, and I think that's what they'll do, they'll probably do a little something. Vegas is Wild West when it comes to NHL off seasons, and anybody might be available. Do you think they're happy in St. Louis with the way the last couple of years have gone? Armstrong's the kind of guy who can pull moves. LA has already made a trade. Friedman has already said this signals a different phase in their development. So there's a team that could get active. I just mentioned San Jose. Tampa Bay's got to do something with its roster. It's got to figure out how to get enough players under contract while shedding enough salary. They have to make moves. Nashville made a trade. What are they doing this offseason? Chicago, we've heard that mentioned when it comes to the Seth Jones rumors, which obviously concern the Columbus Blue Jackets. We've heard about Pittsburgh. They're going to do something. They're always active. Start going down the list, and I've just worked my way through 2 and 1 team in another division. Buffalo, they're trading Jack Eichel, aren't they? Calgary's not happy. Vancouver's saying we're going to be aggressive. Toronto's got to do something, don't they? Like, guys, stop me when you want me to end the list of teams that have motivation to shake things up here. That's why I think this could be fun.
For me, it took you to get to the end for the Canadian teams, and I was thinking about this. Like, we haven't heard a whole heck of a lot. Duncan Keith obviously was originally associated with maybe teams in the Pacific Northwest or in the Canadian West, but then it's kind of down to Edmonton, and from what we understand right now, it's not really a stalemate, but it's kind of a, are we going to do this, aren't we going to do this? Vancouver said they were going to be very active. Haven't really heard much out of it. The Nate Schmidt rumors started to come a little bit to light a little bit more recently again, because we did hear those early on. It's been kind of quiet in Calgary a little bit after that Matthew Tkachuk rumor. Nothing really out there with Johnny Hockey or other of those top 6 forwards that may or may not be moved. I haven't heard boo out of Winnipeg. Like, nothing really associated with winning that I've heard of anyways.
No, and Winnipeg is one of those teams. Kevin Cheveldayoff, Jamie, has been a guy who's been very patient in the past, and you see a move here or there, but unless a player is asked out, and we've seen multiple situations where that's happened, Cheveldayoff hasn't been terribly active, though I imagine there's some impetus for change after the Jets thought they had a pretty nice pathway painted after sweeping the Oilers. Calgary's a team, to me in particular, Jamie, that can't come back and try to sell this again. Like, something has to happen in that market.
Yeah, you that would be an extremely hard sell in Calgary, right? To run it back. In particular, we know the 2 players that are lightning rods for criticism there, right? Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan. Returning with both of them in the fold, I don't know how you sell that to your fans. You know, again, that how much at this stage of their careers, how exciting is a Johnny Gaudreau or Sean Monahan trade, right? Like, are either of those guys significantly moving the needle for the team that acquires them? What is Calgary going to get back in return for either of those guys? Again, at this stage of their careers, with the money they're owed and all of that, with the way their stock has kind of fallen in recent years. So, you know, those could be certainly notable deals, important deals. I'm not sure at this stage, though, that a Sean Monahan deal out of Calgary would even qualify as a blockbuster move. It's big for the Flames. Of course it is, right? And then that's a hole at center they have to fill. That's, you know, a piece who's been a core piece for them for a long time who's out of town. It's a big deal. But if you're just looking at league-wide reaction to that, I'm not sure that qualifies as a blockbuster anymore.
Well, it kind of depends, Jamie. What does the package look like? Think of the last significant deal the Calgary Flames made that kind of shook things up for us. That was Lindholm coming to town. That was Hannafin coming to town. Dougie Hamilton's headed the other way. The rights to Adam Fox. Like, that's a pretty significant deal. If it was a one-for-one trade involving one of those players, you might not have looked at it in the exact same way. But because it was a package deal, you talked about it a little differently.
I just think that now, given where we are with the flat cap, there's so many more considerations and the expansion draft happening this year as well. There's so many more considerations other than just, can this player help us, right? And, you know, Sean Monahan, he's making over $6 million for this year, this coming season, and the one after that, right? So 2 years still in the books at more than $6 million. You know, for a guy who is basically being run out of town in Calgary, who they're looking at and saying, man, this guy can't help us get to where we want to go. are they going to be able to get a significant package in return, or is it really more of a salary dump where they have to take back something of a distressed asset coming back the other way just to get him out of town? I'm not sure. I'm not sure they're going to get a bounty of picks and an interesting young player for Sean Monahan right now.
Maybe, but Karen, as you know, sometimes this is a move that leads to another move that leads to another move. And this is where I think as a hockey fan, you want your general manager to be creative. Look, I've just mentioned a couple of guys who are on record as saying, we're doing something. Jim Benning's feet are going to be held to the fire because he came out and said on multiple occasions, we're going to be aggressive. And he mentioned some of the tools he expected to use this offseason. Brad Treliving said, we need change. Like, they're on record, which means they're accountable for what happens this offseason, and they know that as well as anybody else.
Yeah, both of them are under fire. I mean, it's one thing to come out and say it, but just look at the records of these two teams over the past few seasons. I mean, Jim Benning's going into his 8th season as general manager. He's made the playoff once. Calgary, haven't had any sort of playoff success under Brad Treliving. You don't think there's pressure under somebody once you bring Darryl Sutter back to the organization, somebody who's also been a general manager at some point in his career? Like, both of these guys have a lot of pressure on them to make some moves at some point this summer. Jamie, I get what you're hearing. You don't think those would be blockbuster deals, but even for Calgary, not taking pennies on the dollar, but at least getting either assets or something else in return might just be enough to move the needle for Calgary, especially in how the fan base looks at them.
Well, and I think for Calgary, the question is, what do you need in return, right? Do you just want that cap space off your books, or do you want that cap space freed up, right? And then you can go attack the move in other ways, as you're saying, Scott, kind of the move that comes before another significant move? Or do you feel that you need a contributing asset right away back in your lineup with Sean Monahan? You know, and for me, it seems like it's likely going to be a move. And who knows? Sean Monahan could be back with Calgary next year, right? It could be that they trade Johnny Gaudreau. It could be they trade Matthew Tkachuk, and that's how they mix it up. We don't know yet. But just looking at Sean Monahan specifically, you know, it does feel like, given what he's meant to the Flames over the years, I think the initial return might seem underwhelming to a lot of people if a trade like that does go down.
Yeah, you're right. And maybe neither team is happy, but as one of our listeners has pointed out, and as Karen pointed out as well, the cap space and what do you do with it afterwards? Stephen Calgary says, this season flipped the city. We always loved Monahan and wanted Johnny gone. Now it's the other way. We'd be upset if Johnny's gone. We just want Monahan gone and the cap space that comes with it. So I'll give you an example of a player, whether you think he's better than Monahan or whatever. When TJ Oshie was in St. Louis and he was traded to the Washington Capitals, that wasn't seen as a blockbuster. We look at Oshie much differently now that he went and he got slotted in a specific role with a talented team. And now we see him as a really big part of that team, or at least we have over the last number of years. And the return for St. Louis wasn't terribly attractive, but also nobody in the fan base was really up in arms when it went down that way either.
Change of scenery can be a huge thing. Put in a position where you're not the, say, top line forward, winger, scorer on that team can do wonders for a player's mental outlook on the season. Also, too, just point closer to home. TJ Oshie, Sam Bennett. When he went to Florida, he's put in a different situation. He no longer had that 18-year-old Sam Bennett moniker with him and what he did in the playoffs but couldn't do in the regular season. But he goes to Florida. Coach Quenneville puts him in a position to succeed. He's on the power play. He's got second or third center for that team. And it looks like he's changed his career down there in Florida. Like, if you put a player in a different situation, sometimes it's all about getting away from the team that drafted you.
Marcus and Gibson's actually used the same example. Does Johnny Gaudreau end up on a team like Washington, a la TJ Oshie, fading stars? And I'm not sure we can call Johnny Gaudreau a fading star as of yet, but he's not seen in the same light as 99-point Johnny Gaudreau from a couple of years ago currently. Marcus says fading stars tend to land on a good team with a lesser role, but they can really help in the playoffs. Maybe Phil Kessel's an example of that as well. Toronto was happy he was gone. Pittsburgh was really happy to get him, and he fit in, and he could be out of the spotlight because Sid and Malkin were going to occupy that. No big deal. Worked out pretty well for Phil Kessel with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Keep those texts coming in. We will get to them because of the response in this segment. We didn't get to what I wanted to get to. Is it enough to make you want to tune in? I will ask Karen next, right here on Rintoul and Sermon.
Being aggressive, hitting bombs. Why is that important? Well, because you've got to hit bombs off the tee, and that's what I'm going to do today. Hit bombs.
Phil Mickelson didn't make that video today. That's from a few years back. But Tom Brady tweeted that video out today and had a little fun with it as they continue to hype up the match Quattro. I'm not sure they're calling it Quattro, but it's the fourth time that the match has occurred, Karen.
Phil Mickelson apparently, of course Tom Brady having fun with it, sent it to Tom Brady at 3 a.m. to get him pumped up for the match. I don't know if you're pumped up for the match, Scott. Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady against Bryson DeChambeau and Aaron Rodgers. It's airing at 2 o'clock Pacific time, 3 o'clock Mountain time. If you can find an illegal stream somewhere in Canada, because it does not look like we will get it on TV, it's airing on TNT in the United States. If anyone has some suggestions on where I can illegal stream it, you can text 650-650 or 960-960, please. I would like some information on this. I'm intrigued to watch it if I can.
Really?
Here's the thing. I love Phil's personality in his later years of life. I love Tom Brady's personality right now. They can take a barb, they can also throw it back. I'm not sure quite a bit about their partners. Bryson DeChambeau, I've mentioned this many times. If you see video of him playing practice rounds or playing charity rounds or even on the driving range, if it's not specifically, Wednesday before a tee off for the tournament, he's a lot looser out there. My one concern is he's going to start to talk to Aaron Rodgers in numbers that none of us are going to understand. It's going to get a little more mathematical and physics than any of us are going to want to watch. And I'm going to think, I just don't know if Bryson translates well to this sort of competition.
We'll see, because he has that awkwardness about him. You're right. It's the old first rule of comedy. First rule of comedy, be funny. And quite often, when he tries to be funny, Bryson DeChambeau just comes off as pressing too hard, and it's not natural, and it doesn't come off as particularly funny. Now, Rodgers can be funny, and Rodgers can be pretty relaxed. It'll be interesting to see him in this environment as well. Let's say it was airing on television. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would spend the time this afternoon to watch it in full. I will commit to highlights. I will commit to some social media content. I wouldn't watch this in its entirety.
What was it, 2.0 or 3.0? The one with Tiger and Manning and Brady, and that was 3.0, and Brady and Mickelson. That one was at a perfect time in where we were in the pandemic. We'd had no PGA Tour. All the sporting events in the world had been shut down except for UFC. I think maybe NASCAR had been back at that point, or at least that's when they were doing the virtual NASCAR races on air, which, again, it boggles my mind. We were watching that on TV. But the match at that point was something we needed, some sort of sports entertainment. This strikes me as a Tuesday in July. Like, this is random. It's July 6th, a Tuesday. Why? Did a little investigating. The tournament coming up this week doesn't have a lot of high-end talent because most of that talent is heading to the Open Championship in a couple of weeks. They got to do some quarantining ahead of getting to England. So this kind of strikes me in the calendar where they could fit it in, but it feels forced to me.
Well, when you're going to use football players, current ones specifically, like Manning obviously had retired at that point in time, but Brady was still active, and he's going pretty strong. Last time I checked, you're going to have to do it at a certain point in the calendar. And if you want to get stars from golf, Phil Mickelson just won a major championship. Like, Phil Mickelson can still play, and he's going to play in big-time events. There are very few windows where it's going to occur, plus you don't want it going up against certain things in the calendar. I understand why it gets sandwiched in here. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what comes back and to see if there's a few funny moments. We got a few the last time around. I know you were critical of Tom Brady's game. He did dial that. He did. Well, I wasn't terrible. He wasn't terrible.
It was terrible, Scott. He had one shot where they called him out on the broadcast. I think it was Brooks Koepka, who probably won't be chiming in on this one. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll put money against Bryson DeChambeau. But it was Brooks and Charles put money on Tom to hit it, and he hit the shot. It saved his entire round. But Scott, like, he comes in touting this really good handicap, and I'm like, he is completely lying about how he hits a golf ball, because that was embarrassing for Tom.
Isn't that better, though, where he's just an average golfer, like, not maybe the rest of us, he's probably better than the rest of us, but isn't that kind of comforting to see? Like, if I was going to tune into this, I'm not tuning in because I think I'm going to see this incredible exhibition of golf. I know Phil's going to hit some shots. I know Bryson's going to smash the ball somewhere. And if I get one or two from Rodgers or Brady, that's enough for me. Like, Brady hitting that one shot and tearing his pants, That's all I needed.
There's that.
That's all I needed. I was good.
I always forget about the fact that Tom Brady tore his pants.
See, that was fun. And that's
forget
all I'm
about
looking
that.
for from those guys. Drop a couple of
Okay.
one-liners. Don't embarrass yourself too much out there and be able to laugh at yourself, because quite often high-level athletes aren't able to do that. I think it's one of the reasons people have enjoyed Tom Brady more in recent years. Whether you're a Brady fan or not, you've seen more of his personality, and more people have said, you know what, there's more there than I thought.
Bryson DeChambeau, that's the one. If anyone's going to tear his pants out there, that's the one I think would happen. I think it'd be a really hilarious, even more funny than Brady. Aaron Rodgers, though, is setting himself up for not failure, but to assume that if he doesn't play well and he has a round like Brady did the last time around, that he's put it out there in the world that this is the reason why. Like, they talked to the media yesterday. Threw some barbs at Phil, some pop shots. It was really funny, but he's like, I literally played 8 rounds since last August. No, that's not made up. Sorry, might have exaggerated. Maybe I played 9 rounds since last August. You know, last training camp, he hasn't played a whole heck of a lot. Understandable. He did also go on to talk about the fact that he's been working on his mental health and his mental outlook on things since he's been stepping away from football and with the whole Packers situation, which I thought was really cool. But the fact that he's like, I'm going to put this out there and just say, just in case I'm really bad, like, I've only played 9 times. So give me a break.
So this is what's going to be overanalyzed most likely. When Charles Barkley or somebody else jokes with Rodgers about the Packers situation, what Rodgers says, and likely it's going to be something light and somewhat comedic coming back. I'm sure he's thought about this. Whatever he says is going to be analyzed a lot.
Mm-hmm. It is, because it's going to be, or will somebody ask him about Green Bay Packers? What are you going to do this offseason?
Well, that's what I mean. Somebody's going to say something like that, like Barkley, or somebody's going to come on and say, where are you playing next year? Like, and Rodgers is going to have to respond to that somehow, some way, and chances are it's not going to be a serious comment, but people are going to attach some form of seriousness to it.
Apparently it's raining there, which doesn't bode well for this going off, if it is. If you haven't checked out the course, it's Big Sky in Montana. It is beautiful. Apparently it has a lot of elevation on it, and a hole that is a par 5 that is 700 and some odd yards. It's obviously, you start high and low. I'd like to see if Bryson go for this on 2 shots. We'll see, but hopefully it gets off and I can find an illegal stream to watch it. Scott, 23 minutes. How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm not terribly nervous yet. And you're asking about Italy, Spain. Rinto and Sermon continues, and at the top of the clock, Italy and Spain are going to kick off. But don't go anywhere, because Rick Bowness, head coach of the Dallas Stars, is going to join us at that moment. Really looking forward to the conversation with him. I'm not terribly nervous yet. I think I was more nervous for Belgium. I back the Italian side. This is the team I would like to see win Euro. But Spain poses some challenges, and Spain can score some goals. And Italy lost one of its key defenders to a torn Achilles last match in beating Belgium. So, yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, but I wouldn't say I'm on pins and needles at this point.
So Italy is the only team remaining in Euro 2020, 2021, whatever you want to call it, that won all of its group stages games. Only France in 1984 and Spain in 2012 won the title after going 3-0-0 in the group stage. So history's not on the side of Italy running the table and winning all of its matches. I understand that that's a difficult thing to not have at least a draw in the group stage. Here's the one thing where I think you should be pretty confident going into this. Spain, this will be their most difficult competition of the tournament so far, playing this Italian, this Azzurri side. I believe Italy played its most difficult competition against Belgium in the last match, and they held on, they looked good to start, and then they played that defensive style and withstood the barrage of Belgium in the second half. I think you should feel confident going in. I think Italy has shown that it's been one of the more dynamic teams in this tournament, but they can still fall back if they need to and get a lead and hold on to it.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's how I felt about Italian sides of the past when it came to defensive posture, and well, there's just no goal going to be conceded. I'm telling you, that was a nervy 20 minutes against Belgium. Italy, with this current group of players, it looks so much more comfortable when it's pushing forward. And you don't want to do that recklessly when you've got a lead, because preventing goals is what wins you these kinds of tournaments. They did not look comfortable when they decided for the last 20 minutes of that match to say, okay, we know now we have to go into a bit of a shell. They didn't look comfortable with that whatsoever. That actually made me more nervous. With Italian teams in the past, I would have said, this is locked up. They're good.
It won't surprise me if Spain does dominate possession, because that's what they've been doing all around in this tournament. It started with Sweden, but we know the reasons for that one, Scott. It's because Sweden thought the only way it could get any sort of result was to park the bus. I think you'll be okay. They struggled in the quarterfinals against a 10-man Switzerland towards the end. The only reason that they won that match, in my opinion, was the fact that Switzerland, they blew it in the penalty kicks. They should have won that match in those penalty kicks, because Spain should not have even been there. They should have won in regulation, but they did not look there's something a little off about this Spanish team. So I'm with you. I think it'll be I'll be confident for you if you can't be.
I appreciate that. I really do. And we will update you on that. And we will give you a spoiler alert, but we will update you on that through the final hour of the program today. There was some news in Canadian soccer today, and footy fans in this country would love to see the likes of Italy or Spain or England or Denmark come 2026. The field's going to be expanded. Canada, the U.S., Mexico, joint hosting bid for the next World Cup after next year. Montreal's out. Montreal is out. Now, Montreal was going to host games. Montreal has pulled out of hosting in 2026. It is completely financial with everything that's happened here over the course of the past 16, 18 months, whatever span you want to use. The government of Quebec said we got to divert resources elsewhere. And maybe that will be other cities' answers as well. Toronto's going to get games. We know that. Edmonton, you would think, is going to be in with the stadium, with the history there. Vancouver's been the question. Vancouver's been the question for a very long time. And I don't think that answer is complete yet, despite what happened with the government in BC saying we're out. We couldn't get assurances. We're not putting our foot forward. This, to me, Karen, is another indication that things can change. And that means, and maybe it's pie-eyed optimism on my part, this means Vancouver can still get in, should it want to, and should the government want to.
So here's the thing. The pandemic has changed things on two sides, from how I see it with Vancouver and how I see it with Montreal. Montreal, we know the impact of it. Initially, they had estimated that the government of Quebec was going to go $50 million to help with hosting some of the games. They've estimated now it's risen to about $103 million. And with the pandemic and people losing their businesses and the citizens being hit hard, the Quebec government decided against putting that money to a sporting event. They said, okay, we need to allocate this money to a more worthy cause. The Quebec government, as we know, has about a 70% approval rating right now. They want to keep it right there. They want that money to go to their citizens. That is totally fine. With the Vancouver government and the fact that this city and many cities across this country and world has been very impacted by tourism as of late. Vancouver in the summer relies heavily on the cruise ship business. It relies heavily on people coming to Vancouver, Whistler, just to see this place in the summer. And I think if you were to think about it as if we were to put in some money now to host these games, what would it do financially for us down the road to recover from this pandemic?
Yeah, it's not like you need to build a new stadium. There's already one in place. There is appetite from what we've heard over the last couple of years from the FIFA side of things to be a part of Vancouver. This is a place FIFA would like to have games. The BC government has said, you can't give us cost assurances. We don't feel good about it. And a lot of people in the province of BC supported that. A lot of others said you just blew an opportunity. You just blew a world-class opportunity, one you might never have another opportunity to get in on. You should rethink that. This, to me, as much as anything, is an indication that there is still time if you want in. Not to quote Jim Benning, but time is going to run out at some point here. It'll be interesting to see if there has been a change in thought process, a change in stance whatsoever.
Like, think about it. Commonwealth Stadium, full capacity is 60,000 people. That's incredible, the amount of tourism dollars, just hotel room, all that stuff, restaurants, that's going to go to Edmonton. 54,500 is the capacity for BC Place. I was at the match where Canada hosted the World Cup qualifier against Mexico. It was packed. It was phenomenal. I was at the round of 16 match that Canada played Switzerland, I want to say. It
Correct.
may not have been Switzerland, in the Women's World Cup. Like, there is...
It was on Father's Day in 2015. It was my Father's Day present. I was there, so I know exactly what you're referring to.
You were there as well. That was the match they won. And the city has soccer fans. Like, the people will come, and to attract people from around the world, to fill your hotels, to go to your restaurants, to do all the other tourist attractions, stuff that you haven't had for 2 years, you're not going to get it this summer from international travel. You didn't get any of it last year from even national travel or travel within BC. I think it's something that the government should look at again.
Yeah, I think they'll revisit it. There will be lobbyists asking them to revisit it. Whether or not the appetite's there remains to be seen. Did you see this last night coming out of Calgary? And stop me if you've heard this before. New stadium will cost more to build than originally agreed upon. Council meeting last night. Calgary's new arena, by the way, they are going to replace the Saddle Dome at some point here. It's still on. The project's still on, but it is projected to cost $50 to $60 million more than originally anticipated in 2019. That's 10 to 12% more than originally was agreed upon in Calgary.
Well, if you're going to do anything with lumber right now, then I'm not surprised that the cost is going up. It's going down a little bit, but the cost of lumber is ridiculous right now. If you don't sign the deal originally, the cost is going to continue to go up. It's just a matter of fact in the world we live in. It's a lot of it's posturing, and I understand that, and how much it's going to be private money and how much is going to be public money. I get all those things. I saw it. I lived it when I was in Edmonton with their new arena, and Kate's took over and what happened there. But this is just something where it's like, shocking. A couple of years later, you can't get a deal done, and now it's going to cost you 5 to 10 times more money.
And again, you come back to the citizens. And what's the appetite? What's the appetite in the city? How does that go over with your citizens? Can't answer that question. Not living that market. I did see it, though, and I knew that, especially given the financial hardships that people have been through over the past couple of years, there are going to be a lot of people, as much as you love hockey and as much as you want a new rink. And look, we talk sports for a living. We want every sports franchise to be thriving, successful, all of those things. And having an up-to-date arena is a part of that when it comes to National Hockey League. But where are you at with your stomach for public money going into a facility?
That's why I can't hold anything against the Quebec government deciding to say our citizens are more important and their businesses and their livelihood in the moment are more important than holding games. I'm making an argument as to why Vancouver could do it because they could recoup some of the money that's so important to them. But if the Calgary fan base doesn't have the Calgary citizens don't have the stomach for it, I'm not going to hold it against them. This pandemic has affected the entire world, not to mention just here in Canada. And if it goes that some of this money that they don't feel should be going to a new venture, a new arena, I'm okay with that.
I'll tell you this. I saw something I don't have a stomach for. I don't think most hockey fans have the stomach for. You pointed this out to me on Twitter. The Montreal Canadiens staved off elimination last night. That's great. We're going to get another game. It's Game 5 tomorrow in Tampa Bay, and hopefully for the Habs fan base and for hockey fans who want to see a good series, we've got a Game 6 on Friday. But if Tampa finishes it off, someone who suggested this should not be suggesting it in my estimation. What did you see?
Where is it? I got to find the tweet, Scott. It said, even if we don't win, we should hope a thank you for getting to the Stanley Cup final parade.
Well, someone had made the suggestion. So there's this personality in Montreal, radio personality, Aaron Rand, and he tweeted it out. We had the suggestion come in, hey, even if this doesn't end up in what we all wanted it to end up in, a Stanley Cup, should we have a parade anyway to salute this run, to salute how fun it's been, and to show this team how much we care about it? You can't hold a parade when you don't win the cup. You can't do that.
You know why? It's because the players and the coaching staff sure as heck aren't showing up. They're going away to golf and have a relaxing summer vacation. They don't want you forgetting us there. You could maybe raise a banner opening night in Montreal saying Stanley Cup Finals, but even that's Montreal. I don't expect them to do that because I feel their standards within that organization are a lot higher than that. It's like if you put a finals banner in your building, you're saying we are celebrating mediocrity.
Well, there are a lot of organizations that have, Western Conference champions, things like that in their building. Like, they wouldn't be alone in that regard. And I don't know if you'd call it the Western Conference champion or Clarence Campbell Bowl winners. I have no idea. You're right. That franchise is steeped in tradition, they might not want to go down the road. But the suggestion you have a parade for a team that doesn't win the Stanley Cup. No, there's a way to do this, and it's a time-honored tradition for those who want to do it, and it's you show up at the airport, if you're allowed during these times we're in right now, and that's how you salute. You salute the players coming back off the plane, and you say, thank you very much. We're not hosting a formal event, but we showed up in the middle of the night. We've seen this in a lot of sports. We've seen this in a lot of cities. And that's the time-honored tradition. You're not a parade for not winning the Stanley Cup.
So we got a few texts in. The Canucks did in '94 at BC Place. What was it? 35,000 people showed up to celebrate that team. Someone was there, said it was awesome, a celebration. This guy must be a millennial because only millennials celebrate losses. Yes, you get a participation ribbon for going to the Stanley Cup final. I get the idea behind it. It's a morale thing, especially after what we've been through. But it also kind of makes you a little bit, people are going to laugh at you.
Well, there's a difference to me between a formal parade and a celebration. Like there are two different things. I think you can celebrate the one in one way without holding the thing that you get to hold if you win. You know what I'm talking about here? Like there's a difference.
Yes, it's not, and like, do you want to have a situation in Montreal like you have a parade where you're going to celebrate the making the Stanley Cup Finals, a good run, and then it ends up being 8 hours long like the Toronto Raptors because it's so poorly planned. Like, do you want that for a team that didn't win the actual Stanley Cup? Like,
No,
there's a lot
not.
of things to consider here. I want to get this in before we head to break coming up here. We had talked about earlier the fact that it's a tropical storm, Elsa. Right now it's going through Tampa Bay. They shut the airport down at 5 o'clock tonight. They're reopening again at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Hopefully, after they reassess damage, it is nearing hurricane strength from the National Hurricane Center. So who knows if that'll get through Tampa and hit hurricane strength, but it is nearing there. And so who knows how that could affect what we see tomorrow night.
Well, I've seen various reports, and it's all prediction, and winds can change things pretty significantly. When I originally saw it about 8 hours ago or 10 hours ago, whatever it is, well, there's going to be more rain on the eastern side of Florida than there is on the western side. But now, because of the way the storm has come across Cuba, maybe it's going to hit a little more of the western side than originally anticipated. We'll wait and see. We'll cross our fingers. We hope that there's not significant damage, and we hope that tomorrow night's Game 5 goes off without a hitch, more importantly for the community of Tampa and for those communities in Florida. We just hope this is not as bad as many people anticipate that it could be. The head coach of the team that represented the West in last year's Stanley Cup final, and formerly an assistant coach with this Tampa Bay Lightning, I'll use it, juggernaut, Rick Bowness, joins us next right here on Rintoul and Sermon.
Now back to Rintoul and Sermon.
That's right. We're going to talk a little Dallas Stars hockey. We're going to talk some hockey in general. Always a wonderful conversation with our next guest when he has the time, and he's a very busy man, so he often does not, but he's made some for us today. It's Rintoul and Sermon, and now joined by the head coach of those aforementioned Dallas Stars, Rick Bowness, joining us here today. Rick, thank you very much for doing this. How are you?
Doing great, thanks. My pleasure. Hey, great intro. I don't know how the heck you guys got that one, but great intro.
I'm glad. We got you pumped up for this
Dallas
interview.
Star stuff.
Oh, it's probably, and it's been a few weeks since you've heard that, right?
Well, it has been. And right now I'm out in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We don't get the heat that you guys have had out in the West Coast, so it's a pretty relaxing time right now for us.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because, as you well know, a lot of these past 12 months for you, when you think back to last year's tournament and getting ready for the bubble and your team went on the deep run and won the Western Conference and then the challenges of this year, you've been through a lot. A lot of people have been through a lot. Rick, what did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about your group in Dallas during the challenges of these past 12 months?
Well, I'll tell you, anyone that's been around the league for a while, none of us have ever been through anything that we've been going through since actually go back to last March when we went into a pause, and then we're coming back and we're having a training camp in July. Right now we're playing playoffs in July, August, and September. And then starting another training camp in January. So what we've been through is unheard of in the history of our league. So it's been through for everyone involved in our league. It's been a tough grind. There's no getting away from that. But you do find out, circumstances like this remind yourself of, okay, we signed up to pro hockey and you gotta have a lot of give and go as you go along in your career. And it just reminds you of the passion that everyone involved has for the game. There's times that we're all griping a little bit because of the schedule and everything else, but we signed up to be involved in the National Hockey League, and so sometimes you got to take the extreme and the odd and the bad with the good. So this is what we signed up for. You find out again, just the reason why you're in the game is because you love the game, and that's clearly why I'm still involved. And our group this year, everything that we went through with, we had 3 training camps. Right? We had a training camp, then we got stopped for COVID. We had another training camp, then they stopped us for the snowstorm that hit Texas, so we had to come back with another training camp. But through all that, I give our players a ton of credit, man. Their attitudes were great. Their work ethic was great. Their commitment to the team was awesome. We had too many injuries to overcome. The schedule just killed us with 44 games in 77 days. And I know the Canucks found out all about that when you have those pauses and you got to come back and make up games, just how hard it is. But the biggest thing you find out is just a good reminder how much we love the game.
Well, and part of what you say, and I know this because we've spoken before, when you say you love the game, are the relationships that are involved with as close quarters as you've been in with a lot of your players and staff and members of the organization over the last year. How were those relationships, I should say, Rick, enhanced?
They're a lot stronger. You go back to the bubble, like we weren't allowed to go anywhere. And as a coaching staff, we never spent so much time together prior to that. So as a staff, we grew really close. The players, they had nowhere to go, so they were hanging out in the lounge that the hotel provided for us, and they were playing cards and ping pong and video games. So the players hung out an awful lot together. There was nowhere else to go in that bubble. And so our team became very, very close through that, and it carried itself into this year. And I think that's why, with everything that we went through, that we were as competitive as we were right up until the very end. The closeness and the culture that we created there in Dallas, and everyone buying in. So that would be the upside of everything we went through. But everyone became, to answer your question, everyone became a much closer group. The players, the coaches, and the coaches and the players. We just spent so much time with them. So that was the benefit of what we went through.
Rick, we talk about a role as a head coach. We talk about the X's and O's and game planning and game preparation and practice time and managing all of that. But with everything you had to go through from the bubble to the challenges of this last season, how much more important was it for you guys to be aware of the mental health of your players?
That was a huge part of it. And one of the things I insist on our staff is that we have great communication with our players. So we've always had that since I've been there. And it was magnified when we went to the bubble. We made sure that we were talking to our players every day just to see how we were doing. We had great leadership from Jamie, Ben, and the guy and the older group like Corey Perry, Joe Pavelski, Tyler Seguin was around it. Like we had great leadership from that group, and they kept everyone involved, and they made everyone feel part of it, and they made sure that everyone was doing okay. But that was a huge part of our job in the bubble, was to keep everyone as focused as we could, as mentally strong as we could. And, when they were having a tough time or a tough day, then either the players would take the player aside and talk to them. One of our staff would take care of them. But I give our players a ton of credit because they really handled that whole scenario there very, very well. Now, in saying that, if you went back to our players today and said, okay, we're going to go back into a bubble here, and we're going to go for 9 weeks, there's not one guy that would want to do that. But there's no way we would sign up for that one again. But, again, our players had a great attitude. And listen, it helps when you're winning, and it helped that we won the first round, won the second, won the third. So that always keeps everyone in the right frame of mind. When you go there, you're not sure how long you're going to be there. And so the fact that we won a couple of series and we had our advance to the finals was huge. The one thing I think that we did that helped our group was that every night when we have our meetings, we kept them busy at night. The day of the game, you don't worry about them so much. But at nighttime, when you're going back to the rooms, then everyone have their own rooms. It gets a little lonely. So one thing we did every night the night before game is we had all the family members sending in messages to their husband, to their father, to their son, to their grandson. We had all kinds of family videos sent into us, and we would show those after the team meeting. And Blake Como's kids, "Hi, Daddy, we miss you, but we want you to win." And Corey Perry's little boy, who was probably 1.5 at the time. Those things meant a lot to the players. So that helped with their mental strength and their mental ability to deal with everything, that they could see their families were fine, and their family had 100% support for them. So those are the things that we did to deal with the mental health of our players.
So, Rick, when you're in the bubble, you're in a very confined situation. We all know the precautions that had to be taken there, but it was a bubble situation. This season started with not a bubble, but a lot of restrictions for players. They could stay with their families, but there were restrictions for where you could go, what you could do on the road. Did that present for another challenge along the way that you guys had to deal with in being different than a bubble situation?
It's totally different from the bubble. In the bubble, at a hotel we stayed at, beautiful hotel, by the way, it was all NHL people. You couldn't go anywhere. If you went there was a couple of hotels that the team stayed in. If you went from one hotel to the other, it was all chain link fences with guards every 20 feet. So no one was getting in, but nor was anyone getting out. But yeah, it was all NHL people, and you felt secure and you felt safe. And we were all tested every day, and everyone in the hotel was tested every day. So when you walked by someone, you knew that they were safe, they were negative, and no one was carrying the COVID. The difference this year is when we traveled, and we're going into hotels now. We were still on charters, and even on the charters, we had to wear the mask. But when you walked into the hotel, there was other people. There was people that had nothing to do with the NHL. They were regular businessmen. So you're walking through the lobby of the hotel, and there's strange people there. You're getting onto elevators that regular people are getting on and off. So that was the biggest difference. Now, we were still tested every day and twice basically on game day, but we were just exposed to people that we weren't sure if they had been vaccinated. We weren't sure if they had COVID. So those are the things that we dealt with in terms of the hotel and getting in and out of the hotel and getting to the rink. But again, as you mentioned, we weren't going out to any hotel or restaurants or bars or anything like that. It was very restrictive. The hotels, we all stayed in the same. Every team that came into the city stayed in the same hotel, stayed in the same rooms. They had locked off 2 or 3 floors for every team coming in. So the NHL did a great job handling it that way. But we were just exposed to more people this year than we were in the bubble. And again, you're getting on an elevator, somebody walks off, the masks, that's one thing. You just hope that they had been vaccinated. You hope that they had been tested and that they're all negative, but you had no knowledge if they did or they didn't.
He's the head coach of the Dallas Stars. Rick Bowness joining us today on Rintoul and Sermon. A few minutes ago, you mentioned the name Corey Perry. You coached against him for a lot of years. Then you had him under your watch last season. How do you view him differently now that you've coached him compared to having to deal with him as an opponent?
Hated him to love him. Simple as that. When we played Anaheim, I used to have Kevin out there with him all the time. Kevin Biexis scoring. Corey hated playing against Kevin. So, because they both play with that edge, right? But Corey he's just a great competitor. And, we were sorry we lost him. We were sorry he went to Montreal. He was a huge part of our team last year. And he was like Pavelski last year when they came to us at the start of the season. They had been with one organization for 12, 15 years, and to come to Dallas for both of them, that was a big adjustment for them. Routine, lifestyle, schools for kids, traveling to the rink, every habit you're used to doing for 12, 15 years was broken, and you had to start them all over again. So Corey and Joe, they struggled, there's no question, early in the year, but they both came around at the right time. And Corey Perry was obviously a huge part of our success in the playoffs. He was a very calming voice in the room, very calming voice on the bench. We know from the top of the circles down in the offensive zone, he's one of the best, and that's how Montreal are using him. He's wonderful on the power play, but he's just a wonderful teammate. So I'm really happy for him that he's, I'm glad he got another crack at the league, And I'm glad, because he was on the taxi squad there for a while initially in Montreal. And I'm glad to see him back in the playoffs and having the success that he has. And, I've been sending him texts, good luck this round, good luck this round. And he's just a wonderful guy. He's a wonderful competitor. So to answer your question, man, I hated coaching against him, but I sure loved having him on my team the short time we did.
Yeah, and I imagine the Habs would say the same. You said calming voice. He's also a common voice between your team and the one that has taken on the Tampa Bay Lightning this year. Do you see similarities between the run you and the Stars got on last year and what the Habs have found in this postseason?
Well, yeah, I think you have to, all of a sudden, something has to click in, right? Whether it's your offense, whether it's your team defense, whether it's your goaltending, buying it, putting it all together. When you get into the playoffs, something has to click in at some point if you're going to have any success. Clearly, it kicked in with Montreal, probably in Game 5. They're down 3-1. All of a sudden, they win Game 5. And I think a huge part of that whole series was Carey. He played fantastic. And so there's a guy that he brought the team together just with his play and the belief that they could win because of the way he was playing. So when you get everyone buying, something clicks in, and they're saying, wow, the way Carey's playing here, we can win this thing. And it just clicks in, and it carries from one game to the next, one series to the next. And that was a very confident group that played against the Jets. Now, the Jets had, that whole Shifley incident and everything else. All of a sudden, it's a rallying point for them. So something else clicks in that round. They did it, and so now you're going into the third round, and again, you're just feeling so good about yourself. And Carey, again, he was fantastic, and the players they're all watching this and saying, "Hey, you know what? We can beat this team. Look at our goaltender, the way he's playing. We can win." So something clicks in every series to give you that little extra push and gives you that little extra belief that you can win. So that's what we had last year, and that's what I see developing in Montreal. Not that I've watched all the games that closely. I follow the Vegas-Colorado series very closely, more than the other series, because we're going to be playing them next year. We didn't see Montreal all year. So, you watch them a little bit in the playoffs. We're only going to see them twice next year. But just impressed with the way they did come together, and you can see from round to round that confidence grows, and that something clicks in and you believe you can win. And it's carried them this far. And, hey, give them credit, man. It's the lowest points of the team that make the playoffs? Give them credit, because here they are in the Stanley Cup Finals.
So you know the other organization very well, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Of course, you were part of that organization for a time. You played them in the finals last year. They're up 3-1 against Montreal. What makes this Tampa Bay Lightning team so good and so consistent year after year?
Well, for me, they've got the best goalie in the world, and we love Carey Price. We love our goalies. Vasi is to me, because I did work with him for 5 years. He's the best in not our league, but in the world. This kid is unreal. He's big. He's 6'6", 235. People don't realize what a big man this is. But this kid works so hard, and he wants to win. Like, this guy's not going to be happy with 1 or 2 Stanley Cups. He wants to win. He wants to be in the Hall of Fame. He wants it all. And he has the work ethic and the ability to back that up. And he's very humble, but you love his work ethic. You love the calmness that he plays with, and he's just a fantastic goalie. Victor Hedman, I love him like the son. He's just a great. He's got to be. He's a top defenseman in the league. I've never seen anyone skate like Victor at 6'6", and he's 230. The way he can go forward, backward, east to west is unreal. He's just another great kid who does want to win. And up front, I don't know how much people have watched Braden Point to this point, but Braden Point is a miniature Nate McKinnon. They're the same. He's just a smaller version of it. He's explosive. He's dynamic. He's a threat with the puck every time he touches it. He's just a fantastic player. But again, he's very, very humble. And he's no maintenance. Braden comes to the rink, you don't hear a word from him, works his butt off, leaves, and he gets his job done. But he's an elite player. And Kucherov, for me, he's top 3 in the league in terms of skill and his vision and his creativity. But a guy like Kuch, I watched him every day. He'd be the first guy on the ice working on his skills. Like, this stuff just doesn't happen. You've got to have a tremendous desire to win. So those 4 guys have a tremendous desire to win. Now, talk about Stamkos. So we haven't got to Stammer yet. Another great elite player and just a great captain and a great competitor. And he just kind of brings that whole thing together. Those 4 guys and with Stammer leading them, that team is very, very impressive. Now, because those 5 guys work so hard, anyone else that comes into that team has to buy into the work ethic. Or for some of those guys are going to get after him, but it's when you watch those guys practice and play, you better buy in, and that's what's happened there. Those 5 guys, it's led by Stammer, have taken that whole team to another level. Now, if you go back a few years, they got embarrassed by Columbus, so now they had to go rebuild the team, and there's 12 new guys there from when I was there 3 years ago. They've rebuilt that team in the way that they had to play a different style. But again, it goes back to the point. Anyone who came into that team was so impressed with those 5 guys that you had to buy in. Killorn, Palat, they've been there. That group has been together for so long. Johnson, Sergachev, that McDonough trade a few years ago was a huge trade. So again, anyone coming in, you buy into that work ethic, you buy into that team play, or you're gonna be pushed aside. But give Julian credit because, again, they got embarrassed 4-0 by Columbus. Okay, we got to change the way we play the game. We've got those key guys. Now we got to surround them with a different style of play, and that's what they did. That third line, pain in the ass to play against, man, but they're effective. But he went out and got those guys. But Maroon, he went out and rebuilt that whole right side of defense. So he gives you the general manager a lot of credit. John Cooper's done a fantastic job with that team. He's got them together. He's got them playing great hockey. So it's a great organization. They've got a wonderful owner, but they did it the right way, and they've got a lot of great people that want to win.
Rick Bowness, head coach of the Dallas Stars, with us for a few more minutes on Rintoul and Sermon. And obviously they've been able to acquire a lot of talented players in a lot of different ways. They're not all Victor Hedmans right at the top of the draft, nope, or Steven Stamkos. They're undrafted guys. They're third-round picks. But it's part of the development, and part of that is the culture as well. You and I both know some of those players would not have amounted to what they are in different organizations. Rick, everyone talks about creating the right culture. For someone who has an integral role in fostering that, what does that catchphrase mean to you?
Well, you want your players just to buy in to the style of play the coach wants. And to me, it's always the atmosphere around your team has always been very, very important to me. You want your players to look forward to coming to the rink. It's a job, but it's a game. And I've always been a big proponent of that when the player wakes up, you don't want them to wake up, oh, God, I got to go to the rink today. I'm not, you want them to wake up and can't wait to get to the rink. And if you have everyone buying into that culture, that atmosphere, then that just builds that whole team camaraderie. But the atmosphere that you have to have, and Tampa does have that. Those players love the game. They love coming to the rink. They love the practice. They love everything to do with the game. And you want to surround yourself with those players. If you end up with some players that you can just tell their attitude isn't great, their work ethic isn't great, like you can work with them to try to change it. You can work with them to try to buy in. But if they can't, ultimately you got to get them out of there. You got to move them. And you want to get the players in there that love the game, that have that true passion about that we talked about a long time ago, for the game, love of the game. And if you get enough of those players, your culture is going to be positive, and it's going to be a very productive one.
And is part of that culture, Rick, because, hey, it's the GM's job to go out and find the players, and it's the coach's job to use them in the right roles. Is part of creating the right culture trusting the player's opinion on other players as well, whether they are in that room and shouldn't be because of some of the things you mentioned, or guys that you're looking to bring in? What does that conversation look like in today's NHL?
Well, you rely on your general manager to do his homework. And again, you shouldn't have to. If you have a guy in your team for a couple of weeks, you don't need somebody else to tell you good or bad attitude. You just have to watch him. You have to trust your eyes, right? You do. And the Tampa Bay scouts do a wonderful job of going to get the right guy. Julian does a good job of directing them and saying, okay, this is the type of player we need. The scouts go out and they do their homework, and they make sure that if they bring in a Goodrow from San Jose, that he's a wonderful guy, that he's a team guy, and he's going to buy in. So the homework is done before you get them. But but again, the whole organization. Once you get a player for a couple of weeks, you're going to see everything about him. His attitude, his work habits, his competing games. You're going to see that right away. And so, again, they've done a wonderful job of bringing in the right guys in the right role, and those guys accepting the role that they're being placed in, regardless what their role was on the other team. They've come in and they just bought in. So you give the scouting staff a lot of credit. And any conversations you have, players, you talk about it. You got to watch what the player tells you too, because a player might like a guy just because they're friends. So you got to make sure in those conversations, you've got to be a little leery of those. You got to trust your scouts, your management as a coach, and they're going to bring the right player in.
Rick, one more question from myself before we let you go. You played 7 teams last year. Not a lot of variety. How was that playing just those 7 teams, and how much more excited are you going to be getting back to that normal schedule next year of hopefully playing everyone around the NHL?
Well, we're looking forward to that. I didn't mind. I really saw something that the players, 67% of the players enjoyed the back-to-back games. I really didn't mind that. I didn't like when we had to play a team 4 or 5 straight games. That got old, because it wasn't that you could say, "Oh, it's a playoff." Well, it's not. It's not the playoffs. That got old. But we do like those 2-game sets. You win, you play 2 games, and you move on. But we are looking forward to going back and playing a lot more teams. One of the things I had at the end of the season, I had my coaches. I had them focus on different series. Not the teams that we played. Like I mentioned, we got to play Colorado, Winnipeg again. So we had a guy watching Winnipeg. They're back in our division. Minnesota back in our division. We didn't see them all year. We're going to play Vegas 3 times. We didn't see Colorado. We had to get back on top of the teams in our division. We are looking forward to going to a few more cities and a few more rinks. You miss going to Montreal. You miss going to Toronto. You miss going to Vancouver. You just miss that atmosphere with the great fans that the Canadian cities have. So you miss that. And we look forward to a more balanced schedule and not playing the same team 4 or 5 times in a row. But again, one of the things we had to do as a staff is, hey, we better get back on top of our division, because we're going to see a lot of them next year. But we are definitely looking forward to coming into Vancouver.
As are we. And before that even happens, we're looking forward to the NHL offseason. There's an expansion draft in just over 2 weeks. How curious are you as to the type of player movement and moves that get made over the next couple of weeks, Rick?
Yeah, it'll get interesting. I know we're still in we're not too exactly sure who we're going to have to expose. We don't, like everybody else, you don't want to expose anybody you like, but you're going to have to. And those are tough decisions. I don't think you're going to see from Seattle all the trades that the Vegas was able to make. Okay, if we don't take you this player, you give us this guy and give us a couple of draft picks and all the side deals that went on. I'm not sure you're going to see that. Teams paid a heavy price for some of those players that they lost. So that'll be interesting to see of all those the pre-draft deals that are being made. But again, you won't see those until the draft. But it's always interesting when you have an expansion draft. And again, everyone knows how successful Vegas was. They want to see Seattle come in and see what they're going to be their approach and see how successful they're going to be. But a lot of good play guys. We're going to lose a couple of guys, and you hate to see that. But that's all part of the game. That's all part of the business. And as we always say, man, it's the greatest game in the world, but it's one tough business. But we've all bought into it.
You're absolutely right about that. Last question before I let you go. We all hopefully gain perspective as we've gone on in life, and you're no different from us in that regard. You made it clear that you would relish one more opportunity to coach an NHL team as the head coach. How much more have you appreciated this than your first couple of swings?
I really have a lot more. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it. But number one, it's a good team. I'm enjoying being the coach of a good team and good people. But it helps for sure. Some of those teams we coached in the past, well, I was a bad coach, they were a bad team, so it wasn't that good. But I really am enjoying it. And listen, there's a lot more behind me than ahead of me. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to go. I'll be 67 in January. I'm the oldest coach now, so we'll see how far we're going to push the envelope. But the one thing I will say is I really enjoyed it. If I had finished my career as an associate coach, well, that would have been fine too. I didn't get an opportunity. You kind of just respect what you have at the time. There's only 31 of them, or 32 now, these head jobs, so they're tough to get. I really enjoyed my role as an associate coach, certainly in Vancouver and Tampa. When I came to Dallas, working with Monty, I wish I had gotten the job under different circumstances. To be honest, I mean that was tough. What Jim went through, so that was tough for all of us to go through that. But that being said, I'm happy I got another opportunity. I'm happy I'm with a great organization. Tom's a wonderful owner. We got a great general manager in Jim Nill. So I'm enjoying that whole thing. So again, like I said, there's a lot more behind me than handy. I'm just trying to enjoy every day that we have. Still love the game. Still have a great passion for the game, and just going to keep pushing it just as far and as long as we can go.
Well, we love watching it, and we really enjoyed this conversation. Rick, thank you so much for taking time out of your off season. I know those moments are precious. Thank you very much for this. I hope you have a healthy and happy summer, and we will do this again as soon as possible.
Thanks, Rick.
Sounds good to me, and all the best to everyone out in Vancouver. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Well said.
Take
that
care.
is Rick Bowness. You as well. He is the head coach of the Dallas Stars. Text coming in, and this is reflective of a lot of our listeners. It's a breath of fresh air listening to Rick Bowness's interview. Nice to have a coach give real answers. I find during a season, coaches and players have very scripted and generic hockey answers. That's Marcus in Gibson. Yep, that's part of the territory, and a lot of the questions that are asked during a hockey season are much more X's and O's and tactics-based than what we were having with Rick Bowness today. But, early in the show, Karen, we were talking about players who seem older than they are or don't seem their age. Like Rick Bowness doesn't come across as nearly 67. That's not Rick Bowness. He's so much younger and youthful than his actual passport.
It is, and he seems to be having a lot of fun right now. And obviously, he's pretty relaxed in Nova Scotia, just enjoying the summer vacation that he had. I can only imagine what the last 2 seasons have been like. He did talk about it, but it had to take a lot of toll on him and the Stars organization. He said it's easy to have fun still coaching hockey when you got a good hockey team in front of you, and they definitely do down there in Dallas. You expect we know the situation, how they started this season, and I have to expect that they'll be back in a different division and we get back to normal next year. But it's great hearing from him. It's great just the joy that he has talking about hockey.
We have an update for you, and we have a trade to announce. Don't go anywhere. It's coming up next on Rintoul and Sermon.
You're listening to Rintoul and Sermon.
We didn't even tell you what sport, so maybe people will be disappointed. Maybe they won't. Might depend where your affinity lies. I'm Scott Rintoul. She is Karen Sermon. And Karen, we have a trade to announce from Major League Baseball, and it involves the Toronto Blue Jays.
We do. The Brewers are acquiring first baseman Rowdy Tellez from the Blue Jays. According to multiple sources, the return coming back the other way is right-handed pitcher Trevor Richards. Unclear of other pieces. However, Shai Davidi just pointed out that a right-handed pitcher, Bowden Francis, is also coming back to the Blue Jays. He's in a minor league pitcher. Looks like the scouting report on this Richard, he comes from the Rays organization. Scott, of course, we know pitchers that come from the Rays organizations tend to have pretty decent careers. He primarily throws a fastball changeup combo with a slider cutter occasionally mixed in. He made 52 career starts before becoming a reliever full-time this season. They have him under control until 2025. Thank you, Josh Goldman, for your scouting report on Richards.
It's another example of the Blue Jays going out and bolstering their bullpen. And with everything you just mentioned there, Karen, it also gives them the option of a pitcher who has started before, and there have been some injuries at times to the rotation this year, and there's certainly been injuries in the bullpen. So it's a flexible piece. Maybe there's more help, as you just pointed out, coming back in the form of an arm. But this is the second time in recent days that we've seen the Blue Jays go out and get help for their bullpen. And the fear here will be Rowdy Tellez. There was some potential, and you were waiting on that potential, and you've seen flashes of it. This was not a banner start to the year for Rowdy Tellez. He gets a fresh opportunity over in the AL. And Greg and I, who's an ardent Jays fan, we're having this discussion off the air. Well, you hope he doesn't turn into this incredible hitter, and the comparison to David Ortiz, which is a lofty comparison. As much as I like Rowdy Tellez, that's a lofty comparison, might be out there if you're thinking ceiling. The Jays have a lot of hitting, and they've got a lot of hitting under control for a bunch more years. They need help, and this team deserves an opportunity. As much as they were up and down and the bullpen cost them a bunch of games here in the season, early in the season, Karen, they're right there. They've closed the gap in the division. Nobody's run away. They've bolstered this team. They got Adam Simber, who's pitched for them a couple of times since being acquired. Now they go out and they get Trevor Richards. I'm a Jays fan. I like the fact that they're pushing some chips in here, and you're going to have to give something up to get something. I like the fact that they're going to try to open this window here.
The trade deadline is a couple of weeks away towards the end of July. I like the fact they're making some trades early on. I like the fact that they're not waiting to see who's kind of left, Scott. They're being proactive in terms of fixing the issue that they had. Basically, their one issue was bullpens, and we saw it again on Sunday. The bullpen couldn't hold a lead against Tampa Bay, but they still went into Tampa Bay, and they got a couple of victories there. You had mentioned it. They're only 4 out from first place. The Boston Red Sox are playing some pretty incredible baseball right there. Now, they're 9-1. I watched them play Anaheim last night. A little Shohei Ohtani I wanted to see, but it was on my television screen. Watch that. Tampa's been struggling a bit, 5-5. They finally got that in their last 10. They finally got that win against Toronto to snap a little bit of a losing streak. The Yankees are a hot mess right now. Like, they are just going in the absolute wrong direction. And then there's Baltimore.
Oh, you hate to see it. Oh, you hate to see it. The Yankees a hot mess. Oh, you hate to see it.
They had the doubleheader on Sunday. And the first one, Chapman blew a save, and who else was out there that got booed? But they booed 2 guys, and literally, it was against the Mets, and you think it's the Yankees and the Mets in the Bronx. It looked like the Queens out there. It was so many Mets fans that had overtaken the Yankees, and they feel they could because the Mets have a pretty decent team right now. They're first place in the NL East, and the Yankees are just going in the wrong direction, and their fan base hates them right now. I mentioned Baltimore. They are last in the AL East, as they usually are, Scott. And Toronto Blue Jays start a 3-game set against them today.
They had a tough part of their schedule. They were dropping games via the bullpen, and they didn't panic. They said, we got an easier schedule coming up. They've now made a couple moves. They've made the most of this easier schedule of late. We'll see where it goes from here from the Toronto Blue Jays, but it's a significant move that was made today. We do have an update from Euro, so if you are PVRing the Spain-Italy match, you may want to turn down your volume from a moment. We are working our way toward the end of the first half between Spain and Italy, and we can report that in the 41st minute of play, there is still no score. There has been opportunity, and there's been saves made. Nobody's been able to find the onion bag, the back of it anyway, as of yet.
No, they have not. Italy hit a post pretty early on. The Italian goaltender had to make a couple of saves as Spain was pressing. It looks a pretty entertaining match. How are you feeling, Scott, right now? I know it was really difficult to watch because we had a wonderful discussion with Rick Bowness earlier on in this hour, but what did you think of what you've seen so far from your Azzurri?
Yeah, I like the way they started the match, and I kind of felt like Spain would try to push. This has been relatively easy, even so far. I'm okay. I'm okay with this right now. I feel like it's setting up for a big second half for Italy. I'm all right with it at this point in time.
And as Buffalo Bill points out, his Red Sox are 9 games ahead of the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are 4 games out in the wild card race. I apologize for making that mistake. Thank you, Buffalo Bill, for telling me that I am wrong again. He usually calls me out on my Ryan Nugent-Hopkins takes. So I always appreciate the listener. Coming up tomorrow, we have the other semifinal. Time for notes and quotes, Scott?
It is. Let's go.
Who's in the top 6?
Getting pucks out, getting pucks deep.
Who's in the crease?
Really none of your business.
And who's in the press box? It's time for notes and quotes.
As you alluded to, we got a good quote coming up for that match that you will be thoroughly enamored with tomorrow, captivated by. I'm not sure what the correct phrasing is.
As much as I love talking to Rick Bowness, like I don't have another NHL coach at noon tomorrow to take my attention away. I have to be really on point with that interview. Yes, tomorrow at noon Pacific, 1 o'clock Mountain Time. It is England. It is Denmark. And Denmark's Kasper Schmeichel throwing a little shade towards English in the presser today.
Particularly aware of the phrase, it's coming home. Now, what would it mean to you guys to stop it coming home tomorrow night?
Has it ever been home? I don't know. Have you ever won it?
1966 it was home.
Well, was that not the World Cup?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying, the whole thing about a national tournament finally coming home, finally the actual success this country craves.
I love it. I think it's hilarious. And he's truthful.
He's right. This is massive. What a great clip from Kasper Schmeichel today, because you and many other English supporters, after every victory in this tournament so far, and there have been a number, have sent out "It's Coming Home" and the video. This is part of our group chat the other day, and you have every reason to be confident given the way England has played and has built in this tournament. I love that Schmeichel threw a little shade, as you called it, at the notion it's coming home. Well, it's actually never been there. How's it coming home? Mm-hmm. You guys might want to rethink the whole marketing of this. If it's coming home, you may not want to refer to it in Euro. I loved it. I think it's great. Adds a little spice, and it's a little fun that he's having with it. Kasper Schmeichel, the Danes, they are one of the good stories in this tournament as well. We all know how this tournament began for Denmark. We'll be talking about this game tomorrow. Craig Forrest is going to join us just before kickoff tomorrow, and yeah, we'll lead up to it, and we'll get some details as to what happens between Italy and Spain today. That's good. That's fun. That's how it should be.
It is. It's super fun. I also like the fact that, like, when Kasper Schmeichel said, "Have you won it?" Like, the reporter's British, and then he's like, "Well, yeah, we had it in 1966." Like, because it's a national thing, we use the word "we." But I just like how he's having the conversation with the reporter being, "Well, you didn't win it." No, you haven't. Well, we have. Anyways, game 1 of the NBA Finals goes tonight. Scott, this very riveting series between the Bucks and Suns. Some good news, though, maybe, coming out of Milwaukee, or Phoenix, as to where the game is. Tonight, Giannis has been upgraded from doubtful to questionable.
And whether that's good enough for game 1 or not, that's really good news for the Bucks in this series. Obvious statement to be sure. Can he play tonight? How much does he change this series? Potentially a whole lot. I asked you earlier, and I'm not sure how much thought you've given it. Milwaukee winning. How on par would that be with Toronto winning a couple of years ago?
I mean, unrealistic, I guess you could say. They've got the superstar player. Kawhi was in Toronto, but Milwaukee, I don't know if he's going to play. When I look at Milwaukee, I just think of it, because I don't think of Toronto as a small market team. Right? Like, they were the little brother because could you draw stars to Toronto, Canada, across the border? We know how players wanted out of here, so I guess you could compare Canada to a small market team in a way, but it's Toronto, so I have a hard time wrapping my head around that in general. Milwaukee, to me, would be, I think it'd be even more impressive for that city, that market, because of it does have a more small market feel to it.
Well, technically it's a smaller market, but I think the point you referenced is why I see some sort of comparable here. Toronto, as viewed by NBA players and many NBA people, analysts, managers, whatever, has been seen as a small market. It's not in the United States. It's different. You got to cross a border. And, well, those inside the game know how well that organization had been managed even prior to Kawhi Leonard arriving in Toronto. It was viewed as a secondary market for sure. There's no question about that, whether it existed as one or not. As far as numerically, that didn't matter. Perspective, it's a small market. That's where I see a comparison here. Like, Toronto put its name on the map, and there's always going to be, for some people, well, the other team, Golden State in this case, they had injuries, and they were big ones. It doesn't matter. All you do is play the teams that you get dealt. And if they don't have all their players, they don't have all their players. That's just how it works. Are we even talking about this series if LeBron James and Anthony Davis are completely healthy in this. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know if we're talking about the Bucks. If Kevin Durant has one healthy teammate between Irving and Harden, it doesn't matter. They weren't. We're dealing in reality. We're not dealing in hypotheticals here. It would be massive for Milwaukee. We talked about the other small market teams that would see this as a win for them as much as Milwaukee if the Bucks get over.
I mean, for Milwaukee, too, they were always close. Like, they have these great regular seasons, couldn't do it in the playoffs. They got here. It doesn't really matter how they did. You talk about the Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win in sport. Hey, you get to this point, you're probably one of the healthier teams down the stretch because health is extremely important to get to a finals appearance. The Suns have not been in the finals since 1993. Of course, that's the Charles Barkley losing to the Chicago Bulls. We all know how that went in 6 games, Scott. It was a joyous time for you and I as Bulls fans. The last time the Bucks were there in 1971, well, the last time they won it, 1971, you have to go back to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being on that team. The Suns are a slight favorite in this one. Probably that's only because of the fact that Giannis Antetokounmpo is not quite healthy yet. If he plays, we'll see how that goes, but I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to talk myself into it. I'm going to talk myself that this will be a fun series to watch because of the fact we actually really don't know what to expect from these two teams.
It feels like the kind of series that will have to have something happen tonight or next game that people look to and go, oh, that happened. Now I'm interested. Because it doesn't have the sizzle. As much as we can build up the Chris Paul storyline and Giannis and the MVP and the small market, all of those things. Hey, a bunch of players who haven't won are going to get a chance to win this year. In some ways, that should be celebrated, unlike what we've seen in previous years where it feels like it's somewhat scripted. In the NBA, it does feel like something's going to have to happen early in this series for the general populace to go, okay, now you've given me reason to be a little more invested in this. Do you have a rooting interest in this? Are you rooting Suns? You rooting Bucks?
Yeah. No, I'm going with Suns. I want to see Chris Paul. I think he's been such a soldier around the league, and just the unluckiness timing of some of his injuries. You think about that hamstring injury he had with Houston when they were basically looked to be taking out the Golden State Warriors and them getting to their first ever NBA, well, not first ever, him getting to his first ever NBA finals. You talk about earlier in this playoffs. I mean, we forget he had the shoulder injury to start. He looked like he could have been done for the series, comes back. I'm sure he's not 100%. He also had to sit in COVID protocol for 10 to 14 days. And for the Phoenix Suns, I like where they've come from, because you think about 2015, 2016, they had a record of 23-59. That's the first year that they drafted Devin Booker. Again, 24 wins, 21 wins, 19-63 3 years ago. Last year you saw some promise. This year they decided to go all in, getting Chris Paul. I think I'm leaning towards the Phoenix Suns in this one.
It's a good story either way. Like, either franchise has a good story coming out of this, no matter who wins. You just want to see how tan Dan Marley is now, don't you? If the Suns win and they bring back some alumni, you just want to see how tanned Dan Marley is. Forget about Charles Barkley on that 93 team.
Dan could get a tan, and now in his retirement days, I'm sure he's sitting on that Phoenix Sun, or does he even make his home in Phoenix? I don't even know. But
he's got to be super leathery now, doesn't he?
He was leathery back then in 93.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. I don't know how much sun there's going to be for the match number 4 today. I'm not sure. I haven't checked the weather report. Somebody pointed out earlier in the match 3 when Brady was struggling, like it was pouring at times during the course of that match. I don't know what the weather's like in Montana. I will get some highlights a little later. I'll get a little social media content. That's all I'm looking for out of this today.
I want some quotes that we could place in tomorrow and what they're saying. Scott, I'd like to have some of that, to have some fun with it. It looks like if you have TELUS, channel 827, you can get it in Canada. That's what someone texted in. If you just happen to have that on the western side, both sides of the Rockies, because I know, again, don't want to give anybody a plug, but if you happen to have that, that's the channel you can find it on. At the half, 0-0. Scott, your two teams have played to a 0-0 draw at the half. Get to enjoy the second half around the corner right after the show is over.
Yeah, it's enjoyable if Italy finds a way to win. And if I'm saying to you, okay, Karen, hold up your end of the bargain so we can manufacture a bet between Italy and England.
See,
and somebody winds up on the
wrong
side.
I am cheering for your Italy squad today because I want England and Italy, and I want someone to come up with a fun bet for us. No, we're not doing the 5 peanut challenge or the death chip challenge or anything like that. But yes, this is what I want. I want to have some fun on Thursday because we know that England is going to play the Azzurri in the World Cup final.
We will talk to you before that, of course, and we'll help set up Game 5 of the Stanley Cup final tomorrow. Tim McAuliffe will join us. Always a lot to get into with our good friend, host of Tim and Friends. Great stuff from, I'm going to say it again, the Shohei Ohtani of this show, producer Jamie Dodd, who you heard earlier, Greg Ballack, big ups back at Mission Control. We'll turn you over to the big show on the eastern side of the Rockies, Bick and the Boss in Vancouver. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we will talk to you Wednesday morning.